Bravo wasn't just a Western. It was Howard Hawks' political revenge fantasy against High Noon, John Wayne's furious rebuke to un-American cinema, a comeback film Hawks literally vomited over before directing, Dean Martin's career salvation after Marlon Brando gave him catastrophically bad costume advice, and the movie where Elvis Presley's manager destroyed the King's dream role by demanding too much money, leaving Ricky Nelson to collect $2 million in box office gold Hawks never wanted him to earn. Behind the laconic dialogue and legendary shootouts lay a production fueled by ideological rage, political blacklisting, Montgomery Clift's refusal to work with conservatives, and Hawks' terror that he'd lost his filmmaking magic after 4 years away. What audiences saw as effortless masculine camaraderie was actually a masterclass in career resurrection, with two aging legends proving they still mattered, a crooner transformed into a dramatic actor, and a teenage idol deliberately given the fewest possible lines because the director thought he was worthless. Today, we're holding up the jail to reveal 14 weird facts about Rio Bravo, and stick around for a bonus fact about the hat that defined John Wayne's entire career and disappeared in this film forever. Number 14. Wayne's Un-American Fury. John Wayne didn't just dislike High Noon, he called it un-American, and proudly stated he did not regret helping run the writer, Carl Foreman, out of the country. This wasn't film criticism, it was political warfare. High Noon, sometimes interpreted as an allegory for Hollywood blacklisting and a critique of McCarthyism, depicted Sheriff Will Kane desperately seeking help from townspeople who abandoned him, ultimately relying on his Quaker wife to save him. Wayne and Hawks found this cowardly and offensive. Hawks went on record saying, "I didn't think a good sheriff was going to go running around town like a chicken with his head cut off asking for help," and finally his Quaker wife had to save him. According to film historian Emmanuel Levy, Wayne and Hawks deliberately teamed up to rebut High Noon by telling a similar story their way, portraying a hero who doesn't show fear or ask for help, who relies only on a few good men, rather than begging cowardly townspeople for assistance. Rio Bravo was cinema as ideological statement, Hawks and Wayne's vision of proper American masculinity standing tall against what they perceived as liberal weakness. The sheriff doesn't need the town. The sheriff needs only professional competence, loyalty, and self-reliance. This political fury drove every creative choice in the film, making Rio Bravo less a Western than a manifesto about how real men behave when threatened. Number 13. Hawks vomited before directing. Howard Hawks hadn't directed a film in 4 years after the catastrophic failure of Land of the Pharaohs, 1955. He was 62 years old, convinced he might have lost his filmmaking abilities, and terrified of returning to work. When he showed up for the first day of shooting Rio Bravo in 1958, his 41st film, he was so nervous that he stood behind a set and vomited before walking out to direct. Then he created a masterpiece. Roger Ebert later wrote, "To watch Rio Bravo is to see a master craftsman at work. The film is seamless. There is not a shot that is wrong." Hawks' terror was understandable. Land of the Pharaohs had bombed so completely that Hawks fled to Europe, unsure if Hollywood would ever want him again. Rio Bravo represented his entire career on the line. If this failed, he was finished. The pressure was immense, but Hawks channeled that fear into meticulous preparation and flawless execution. The 141-minute running time flows like water. Every scene perfectly calibrated, every character interaction revealing deeper layers. The director, who threw up from nervous anxiety, delivered one of the greatest westerns ever made, proving that sometimes terror produces transcendence when wielded by a master. Number 12. Montgomery Clift's political rejection. Hawks originally wanted Montgomery Clift to play Dude, reuniting him with John Wayne and Walter Brennan from Red River, 1948. Clift turned it down flat. The official reason was artistic. Clift's method acting style wouldn't fit Hawks' entertainer approach. The real reason was political. Clift, who was gay and a liberal Democrat, refused to work again with Wayne and Brennan, both strongly conservative Republicans. The ideological gulf between Clift and Wayne had widened considerably since Red River. Wayne's involvement in blacklisting, his public denunciations of liberal filmmakers, and his increasingly right-wing politics disgusted Clift. Working together again was impossible. But Clift did something remarkable. He recommended Dean Martin for the role. Clift had just starred with Martin in The Young Lions, 1958, and recognized Martin's untapped dramatic potential. Martin's agent immediately approached Hawks with Clift's suggestion. Hawks was skeptical. Dean Martin was a crooner and comedian, one half of Martin and Lewis, known for ersatz Italian ballads and drunken shtick. But he agreed to meet Martin at 9:30 the next morning. When Hawks learned Martin had performed in Las Vegas until midnight and hired a private plane to make the meeting, Hawks was so impressed by that commitment that he simply sent Martin to get a costume and told him he had the part. Cliff's rejection became Martin's salvation, political divisions creating the casting that made the film work. Number 11. Brando's catastrophic costume advice. Dean Martin, terrified about playing his first serious Western role, asked his friend Marlon Brando for advice on how to dress for the part. Brando, who had never made a Western and knew nothing about the genre, told Martin to dress like a cowboy. Martin showed up for the first day of shooting dressed like a musical comedy cowboy, all fringe, fancy boots, pristine hat, looking like Gene Autry or Roy Rogers. Hawks took one look and exploded. According to Hawks in interviews with Joseph McBride, "I said, 'Dean, look, I want a drunk. I want a guy in an old dirty sweatshirt and an old hat.' He went over, and he came back with the outfit he wore in the picture." Martin disappeared and returned in a rumpled hat, dusky coat, dirty sweatshirt, and a patina of sweat, looking like a man who'd been drinking in alleys for months. The transformation was perfect. Brando's advice was spectacularly wrong because method actors like Brando approached characters from internal psychology, while Hawks wanted external reality. A drunk looks dirty, sweaty, desperate, not like a singing cowboy. Martin's willingness to listen and immediately change demonstrated the professionalism Hawks demanded. The costume disaster became a teaching moment, Martin learning that Hawks valued authenticity over theatricality. Number 10. Elvis destroyed by Colonel Parker. Howard Hawks always wanted someone who would connect with teenagers to play Colorado Ryan. His first choice was Elvis Presley, who was enthusiastic about the opportunity and desperately wanted the role. Unfortunately, Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, wanted too much money and demanded top billing over John Wayne. Neither Hawks nor Wayne would tolerate that. The search continued. Elvis joined the United States Army in March 1958, 2 months before filming began, ending any possibility of his participation. This was a catastrophic missed opportunity for Presley's film career. Had he appeared in Rio Bravo under Hawks' direction alongside Wayne and Martin, Elvis might have established himself as a serious actor rather than being trapped in formulaic musical vehicles for the next decade. Parker's greed destroyed Elvis's chance to work with one of cinema's greatest directors in one of the genre's finest films. Hawks moved on to Ricky Nelson, the teenage idol with a pompadour that looked ridiculous in the Old West, but whose name recognition brought audiences. Hawks never wanted Nelson. He considered him too young, too lightweight, too inexperienced. Hawks deliberately gave Nelson the fewest possible number of lines for a third-billed star, minimizing his dialogue to protect the film from Nelson's limitations. Yet Hawks later admitted that having Nelson's name on the poster had probably added $2 million to the film's box office performance, vindicating the commercial instincts Hawks had initially resisted. Number 9. The 5-minute wordless opening. Rio Bravo is renowned for its opening sequence, 5 minutes of pure visual storytelling containing zero dialogue. The film begins after the credit sequence with Dean Martin entering a saloon, having the shakes desperately wanting a drink. Claude Akins pours himself whiskey and deliberately drops a coin into a spittoon, watching Martin degrade himself by fishing it out. Then Akins kills an unarmed man. John Wayne intervenes. Martin tries to help but accidentally knocks Wayne unconscious with a barrel. All of this unfolds with only incidental music and ambient sound, no spoken words. This opening was Hawks returning to his silent film roots, demonstrating that great cinema doesn't need dialogue to communicate character, motivation, and conflict. Film critic Peter Bogdanovich praised the sequence in digital video disc supplements, noting how Hawks establishes Dude's alcoholism, his humiliation, his desperation, and his redemptive violence all through action rather than exposition. The wordless opening sets the tone for everything that follows, a film where gesture, glance, and physical behavior communicate more than speeches ever could. Hawks labored to create mood and setting, introducing genuine characters defined by their flaws as much as their strengths. The 5-minute silence forces audiences to watch carefully, to read faces and body language, to engage actively rather than passively consuming dialogue. It's a masterclass in visual storytelling from a director who learned his craft in the silent era. Number 8. The 7/8 scale sets. The sets in Old Tucson, Arizona, where Rio Bravo was filmed, were built to 7/8 scale, slightly smaller than normal, making the performers look larger than life. This subtle visual trick wasn't immediately obvious, but created a psychological effect where Wayne, Martin, Brennan, and the other actors appeared more imposing and heroic against the slightly diminished architecture. The choice reflected Hawks' understanding of myth-making. Westerns aren't realistic. They're legends. Larger-than-life stories requiring larger-than-life heroes. The 7/8 scale sets amplified the actor's physical presence without audiences consciously noticing the manipulation. Wayne, at 6 feet 4 inches, already dominated most scenes, but the scaled-down sets made him truly gigantic. Even shorter actors like Walter Brennan gained stature. The technique also made the confined spaces feel more claustrophobic during the siege sequences. The jail and surrounding buildings felt compressed, emphasizing the hero's entrapment. Hawks had used similar tricks throughout his career, understanding that cinema is artifice and that smart artifice creates emotional truth. The slightly smaller sets made the heroes appropriately legendary, transforming competent professionals into myths. Number 7. Dean Martin's transformation. Before Rio Bravo, Dean Martin was known for two things: singing ersatz Italian ballads and playing a lovable drunk opposite Jerry Lewis. The idea of Martin as a serious dramatic actor seemed ridiculous. His first solo film after splitting with Lewis, 1957's 10,000 Bedrooms, bombed catastrophically at the box office, while Jerry Lewis continued succeeding without him. Martin's career appeared dead. Then came The Young Lions, 1958, where Martin was billed third behind Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift in a World War II drama. Martin wanted to become a dramatic actor, known for more than slapstick comedy films. Though offered only a fraction of his former salary, Martin took the role and was excellent. This led to Vincente Minnelli's Some Came Running, 1958, opposite Frank Sinatra and Shirley MacLaine. Martin was now recognized as a legitimate dramatic actor. Rio Bravo became his first serious Western. Martin later admitted he found the role of Dude very difficult to play. Portraying a genuine alcoholic rather than his whimsical drunk stage persona required completely different skills. The result was his most layered and complex performance. Martin's Dude battles demons, fights for redemption, trembles with withdrawal, and desperately tries not to disappoint Wayne's Chance, who believes in him more than he believes in himself. The scene where Dude pours bourbon back into the bottle became one of the most life-affirming scenes ever committed to film, according to critics. Martin's transformation from comedian to dramatic actor was complete. Number 6. Harry Carey Jr.'s deleted role. Although Harry Carey Jr. is listed in the opening credits, he doesn't actually appear in the final film. Carey had a drinking problem at the time and made a catastrophic blunder on one of his first days on set. He called director Howard Hawks Howard instead of Mr. Hawks. Hawks was furious at the familiarity and lack of respect. His contract, including his pay and his screen credit, was honored, but his part as a townsman was completely cut from the film. This demonstrates Hawks' iron control and unforgiving standards. Carey, son of John Wayne's mentor, Harry Carey Sr., should have known better. The informality crossed a line that Hawks, a director who demanded professional respect bordering on deference, wouldn't tolerate. That Hawks kept Carey's name in the credits while removing every frame of his performance was calculated punishment, a permanent reminder of failure visible to audiences who would never see Carey's work. Malcolm Atterbury, who played the stagecoach driver Jake, also appears in credits but not in the final cut, though for reasons unrelated to misbehavior. These ghost credits remind us that film is constructed, that the version audiences see represents countless invisible choices about what to include and exclude. Number 5. Wayne's famous hat's final appearance. Rio Bravo was the last film in which John Wayne wore the hat he had worn since Stagecoach, 1939. For 20 years, that battered, torn hat had defined the Duke's screen persona, appearing in dozens of westerns as Wayne established himself as America's cowboy icon. The hat was as recognizable as Wayne himself, a visual trademark instantly identifying its wearer. Hawks understood symbolism. By the end of the film, Wayne's character represents the culmination of everything he'd played for 2 decades. Duty, decency, integrity, competence. The hat embodied that history. Its retirement after Rio Bravo marked a subtle shift in Wayne's career. At 51, he was entering his elder statesman phase, still vital, but acknowledging the passage of time. Future Wayne westerns would feature different hats, different characters, different tones. The stagecoach hat belonged to the Wayne of the 1940s and 1950s. The Wayne emerging from Rio Bravo, older, more romantic, more vulnerable, needed new visual markers. That one of cinema's most iconic props made its final appearance in Hawks' masterpiece feels appropriate, the old guard bowing out on top. Number 4. The Dmitri Tiomkin Connection. Composer Dmitri Tiomkin, who had scored Hawks' Red River, 1948, returned to provide music for Rio Bravo, creating the memorable song My Rifle, My Pony and Me. The melody was actually recycled from Tiomkin's Red River theme, Settle Down, rearranged with new lyrics by Paul Francis Webster. Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson sang it in the famous jail scene, with Walter Brennan joining for the encore, Get Along Home Cindy. Hawks understood that Martin and Nelson were famous singers, so not letting them sing would waste their talents and disappoint audiences. But the singing scene works because Hawks frames it as character revelation rather than performance. Dude and Colorado don't break into song randomly, they sing to calm nerves during the siege, finding grace under pressure through music. The scene demonstrates Hawks's principle that characters reveal themselves through meaningful gestures. For two famous singers, singing is their natural language. The Western writers of America later chose My Rifle, My Pony and Me as one of the top 100 Western songs of all time. Martin recorded both it and the title song Rio Bravo for Capitol Records. These recordings marked Martin's shift from Ersatz Italian ballads to country and Western music, a transformation that began with Rio Bravo and defined his later recording career. Number 3. Highest grossing Western of 1959. Rio Bravo became the highest-grossing Western of 1959, earning $5,750,000 domestically, approximately $10,500,000 in total box office. This was a spectacular comeback for both Hawks and Wayne, who had both been in career slumps. Wayne hadn't made a Western since The Searchers, 1956, and his subsequent non-Western films had failed commercially. For Hawks, this validated his return after 4 years away. The commercial success vindicated every risk, casting Martin against type, hiring Nelson despite not wanting him, spending 141 minutes on a simple siege story. Audiences embraced Hawks's vision of masculinity, professionalism, and friendship under fire. The film's leisurely pace, criticized by some as too slow, allowed characters to breathe and relationships to develop naturally. Modern audiences raised on rapid editing find Rio Bravo contemplative, but 1959 audiences appreciated Hawks taking time to establish mood and character. The box office triumph launched Wayne and Hawks into another decade of westerns, with Hawks eventually remaking Rio Bravo twice as El Dorado, 1966, and Rio Lobo, 1970, both starring Wayne in essentially the same role. The formula Hawks perfected here, sheriff plus drunk plus kid plus old-timer defending against overwhelming odds, became his signature, repeated because audiences demanded it. Number 2. Ward Bond's final film. Rio Bravo was the 22nd and final film pairing of John Wayne and Ward Bond, lifelong friends whose on-screen collaborations defined decades of cinema. Bond played Pat Wheeler, the wagon train boss who offers to help Chance and gets killed for his trouble. Bond's death scene was actually filmed from a distance using a double, because Bond had already left the set to return to location shooting for his television series Wagon Train. Bond died of a heart attack on November 5, 1960, just over a year after Rio Bravo's release, making his brief appearance in Hawks's film particularly poignant. Wayne and Bond had been friends since their college football days at University of Southern California in the 1920s, and their friendship lasted until Bond's death. That Rio Bravo marked their final collaboration feels fitting. Bond's character dies, helping Wayne's character, a symbolic representation of their lifelong loyalty. Wayne was devastated by Bond's death, losing not just a co-star, but a brother. The scene where Wheeler is shot from his horse and dies in the street carries extra weight knowing it was Bond's final on-screen moment with his best friend. And go ahead and like and subscribe because the remaining facts reveal even more secrets about this Western masterpiece. Number 1. The film that inspired Carpenter. Rio Bravo's influence extended far beyond the Western genre. Director John Carpenter's 1976 film Assault on Precinct 13 was directly inspired by Hawks's siege narrative, updating the story to modern urban Los Angeles. Carpenter, a massive Hawks admirer, transplanted the basic premise, a small group defending a police precinct against overwhelming odds, into a thriller about gang warfare. Carpenter provides commentary on Rio Bravo digital video disc releases, explaining how Hawks' film shaped his entire approach to cinema. The influence goes deeper than plot. Carpenter absorbed Hawks' preference for character over story, his laconic dialogue style, his emphasis on professionalism and competence, his interest in male bonding under pressure. Directors like Walter Hill, Peter Bogdanovich, and Quentin Tarantino have all cited Rio Bravo as foundational. Tarantino famously said that when beginning a relationship with a woman, he shows her Rio Bravo, and if she doesn't like it, there's no relationship. Half joke, half serious statement about aesthetic values. The film's reputation has grown steadily since its release. Initially, some critics dismissed it as formulaic, but French auteur critics championed Hawks, and Rio Bravo became recognized as one of cinema's great achievements. The Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2014. It holds a 96% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with consensus noting Hawks and his stellar cast performing at peak levels. An English critic wrote, If I were asked to choose a film that would justify the existence of Hollywood, I think it would be Rio Bravo. Number 0. Bing Russell's uncredited death. The cowboy killed by Joe Burdett at the very beginning of the movie in the wordless opening sequence was played by Bing Russell, Kurt Russell's father, in an uncredited role. Bing was a Western character actor who appeared in numerous genre films and television shows, including Gunfight at the O Point K Point Corral, Bonanza, and The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp, before famously becoming owner of the Portland Mavericks baseball club. His brief appearance as the murdered cowboy carries symbolic weight, the innocent victim whose death triggers the entire plot, the catalyst for everything that follows. That Kurt Russell's father played this crucial but anonymous role connects Rio Bravo to Hollywood's generational continuity. Kurt would later become a major star in westerns himself, most notably in Tombstone, 1993, continuing his father's legacy in the genre. Bing's uncredited work represents thousands of character actors who populated classic Hollywood westerns, familiar faces viewers recognized without knowing names. These workhorses made Hawke's perfectionist casting possible. Even the smallest roles were filled by professionals who understood the genre's rhythms. Bing Russell's murder in Rio Bravo's opening initiates the chain of events leading to the siege, making his anonymous corpse the foundation upon which Hawks built his masterpiece. Rio Bravo endures not as political statement, but as perfect execution. Hawks and Wayne's ideological fury transformed into flawless craftsmanship, their rage against high noon channeled into creating something superior rather than merely contradictory. The darkness behind its creation, Hawks vomiting from terror, Cliff's political rejection, Martin's costume disaster, Elvis's destroyed opportunity, Wayne's blacklisting pride, makes its seamless beauty more remarkable. A film born from fear, anger, and ideological warfare became a meditation on friendship, professionalism, and grace under pressure. Hawks proved he hadn't lost his magic. Wayne proved he still mattered. Martin proved he could act. Nelson proved he could earn $2 million Hawks never wanted him to have. What makes Rio Bravo unforgettable isn't its politics. It's Hawks' understanding that character trumps ideology, that watching competent people do their jobs well creates deeper satisfaction than any message. The film that began as conservative counter-argument became something universal, a story about loyalty, redemption, and men standing together when the world demands they stand alone. Hawks spent 141 minutes proving his vision of masculinity, and audiences have spent 65 years proving he was right.